Hello and welcome to this lecture on the 1920s economy and the consumer economy. And it is an economy that is roaring and puts much of the roar into the 1920s, and it's a real prosperity, and it's the beginning of a great shift in the American economy from a country of producers to a nation of consumers. But it's just the beginning of this shift, and it's not going to go all the way. So what's leading the charge? Well, war savings bonds is putting a lot of money into banks and a lot of money into people's pockets. Tax cuts. This is creating a lot of capital to invest. Banks, investment bankers are flush with money, and they'd like to see that invested into new enterprises. And there's consumers who have money and wish to buy, and so it's going hand in hand. And then just production, with better production happening, cheap oil, and a lot of new supplies of oil, which is really coming into its own at this time with the automobile, and it's going to lead to rapid growth in production. And nothing really symbolized both the production and the consumption side of it than the automobile, and in particular the Model T, an automobile that was affordable to a large number of people. So the Americans in the 1920s, these are people who are going to be doing a lot of firsts. The first to be sort of listening to electric music, to hearing radio ads, to using vacuum cleaners, drinking orange juice out of season, listening to news and sports on a radio. And in a lot of ways, American life is very much transformed. But this is mostly happening within the urban areas, in the cities. And, a good 50 to 40% of Americans are still living outside of the cities. And for many Americans are not going to be really participating in this. African Americans, Mexican Americans, Native Americans are not really going to be participants in this. Now, within this consumer society, you had to keep up with your neighbors. Keep up with the Joneses is how it's often phrased. If your neighbor gets a new vacuum or radio, then you got to get one too. And you still see this mindset today of needing the latest, or at least thinking you need it. You don't need it, but there's a lot of incentive to want to do that. And the thing that everybody wanted was a car. And there's two people who were more responsible for revolutionizing the car industry and making it affordable or desirable by a large number of people. And that's Henry Ford of the Ford Motor Company, and maybe less often cited, but just as important, is Alfred Sloan of General Motors. Ford revolutionized production. Sloan revolutionized marketing. So there's Henry Ford on one of his early vehicles. He was very good at what's called scientific management, and another guy, Taylor, is also very prominent in this. And it's about getting as efficient movement within the factory as possible. So a lot of sort of efforts to minimize workers' movements and to be more and more efficient with it. And this creates a dilemma, and we'll get back to that in a moment. So if you look at the production of, this is the production of a Model T, and, cost of the Model T, as measured in months of an average worker's wages. So in 1908, if you wanted to purchase a Model T for the average American worker, it's going to take 20 months of wages to afford it. By 1920, it's only 3 months worth. That's affordable. That's, hey, yeah, I could get one of those at that price. And it's his production that, improvements in production that allows him to do this one. So it used to make one Model T would take about 12 and a half hours. And he got that down to about 1 hour. And when you're reducing production by that much, you're going to be able to reduce the price. He's going to cut prices about 6 times in the first half of the 1920s. But he's got a problem. It's not a fun place to work. It's really grueling assembly line to work on. And he had a lot of problem with turnover. And turnover is when workers are getting hired, and then they're quitting very quickly, and you got to keep rehiring new people, and no business wants that. It's a real pain because you got to train the new people. That's going to take time and energy. It's going to decrease your efficiency, and new workers tend to be not very good at their job at the beginning. It takes a little bit of time, and so they're inefficient, and so this is a big problem. And so his solution was, shocked others within the industry, but he raised the price of labor from about $2 a day to $5 a day. And that might sound like pennies to us now, but that was a lot of money. That's twice as much money as a worker could make, at the factory down the road. And so they flocked to his factory in droves, and, they wanted the job. When they got it, they wanted to keep it, even though it's such a tough job. You're making so much more money. And then he reduced the number of hours you're going to be working as well. So you're going to make more money and work less hours. Now, it's a tough job, but he solved that problem of turnover, and it was a huge success. There's Alfred Sloan of General Motors, and he built General Motors into the benchmark of the multinational corporation. Still is one of the world's largest multinational corporations, and his innovations were in marketing. So some examples of this: every year coming out with a new design, a redesign every year, and convincing the consumer that you got to get the latest design and the latest sort of fashion. You very much see that today going on as well. And the first company to use credit, selling on installment plans, and also developing a series of automobile divisions within his company that are different by their status and their level of luxury. So there's the less expensive Chevrolets, and the more expensive Buicks and Cadillacs as well. So Ford demonstrating, the improvements of mass production, Sloan revealing the importance of merchandising in a modern consumer society. And look at what happens to the automobile sales in the United States. This is the total number of cars in millions, and it's comparing the United States. Whoa. Now we can see it really takes off after World War II, but we can see a big boom up here as well. Whereas the rest of the world never really fully embraced the automobile. And it's going to change the United States in a lot of ways. And so a boom in other industries. Gas will take off. Steel, yes and no. It's in decline in the railroad industries, but in a steep, sharp climb up in the automobile industries. Rubber, glass, road construction will double the number of roads they'll build in this time. New industries like along the side of the road, the gas station, the motel, the mechanic, railroad industry weakening, easier marketing of perishable food that from the farms outside of the city. It's much easier to get them into the cities. Cars went from being a luxury item, a toy of the rich, to a symbol of success and necessity in a lot of ways. Broke the isolation on the farms. Opportunities for the young to get away and go out for a joyride, maybe go to Lover's Lane. For rural areas as well, it's going to, for schooling, you're able to bus the students in. It's a little bit easier. Car accidents will be on the increase, and gangsters, criminals can easily get away. It's the golden age of the bank robber. Think Bonnie and Clyde. Now, it's in the 1930s, but they're using the automobile. Now, think about with car accidents. Remember, government is always slow to react to changes within society and changes within economies. And so with this car taking off so quickly, there were no rules of the road. There are no driver's license. There's no stop signs or red lights or speed limits. There's no seat belts or other safety measures. And so there was a plethora of accidents early on, and often these involved horses and cars getting in the way of each other. And just think about, the change to the city. To consider how much the car changed America and the world, consider what a city today would look like, or smell like, or sound like if there were no automobiles. And it's such a revolutionary development. And while cars are not unknown outside the United States, it's the United States, it becomes a car culture. Now, alongside the car, there's an early gas station, are the electrical conveniences. And so electricity is coming into more and more homes in the 1920s. By about 1930, about 2/3 of all American houses will have electricity, and almost all of urban city households will have electricities. About half have a phone by about 1930. And, as more and more homes have electricity, the appliances follow. And this is a refrigerator. This is a washing machine. I hope you recognize that. Vacuum cleaner. Toasters was another big one. Radios. And advertisers would claim that these save labor for, the housewife, and it's going to be easier for them. But in fact, it didn't, because women just had to do more because standards of cleanliness would keep rising. As before, washing the bed sheets was a real chore. You didn't do it as often. Well, now it's easier, so now you're supposed to do it like every week. The vacuum, you got to clean the floor every day now. So it was far from liberating women at these times. It just sort of gave them more work that they were expected to do. Changes in eating habits, and Americans began to consume fewer like bread and potatoes, like starchy foods, more sugar, fruit, vegetables. It's the time of those, policy in Latin America, a lot of control over Latin America, United Fruit Company, Hawaiian Sugar coming in a lot more. And more processed foods that's ready-made. All you got to do is cook it up. You don't have to do any other processing in it. And so it's ready to cook. And this came out of new innovations in food processing that happened in World War I. They're learning how to do this much more efficiency, and frozen foods more and more as well. All right, advertising really became of a golden age at this time, and we've conquered production. Now we need to bring in those consumers, and they're going to appeal to your dreams. We'll get to a good quote in a moment. And branding becomes, a new thing, because you got radio and movies. You can create brand recognition over, entire regions or over the entire nations. And this is when we start to see some brands that we still have around today. If we go back to this one, they're still around. Campbell's Soup, Gerber's is still around. Maxwell House Coffee, still around. These brands that were able to very successfully brand themselves in the 1920s. And advertisements on radio, but more importantly in the magazines. That's where most Americans would see their advertisements. Now, this is what one ad executive said about this one. You're not selling a product, you're selling them their dreams. Sell them what they longed for and hoped for and almost despaired of having. Sell them hats by splashing sunlight across them. Sell them dreams. Dreams of country clubs and proms and visions of what might happen if only. After all, people don't buy things to have them, they buy hope. Hope for what your merchandise might do for them. And you very much see in this one Barbasol, which is a shaving device for that clean shave, smooth face. And if you can only just get Barbasol and have a better shave, then I might just get the girl and she just might say to me, "Kiss me again with your Barbasol face." And Listerine, another product that was able to successfully brand itself in this time. A lot of the successful consumer products in advertising and this idea of selling them their dreams was a lot about personal hygiene, because of that dream of getting the dream boy or the dream girl. Well, you got to have good breath. You got to be clean and have clean hair and the right clothes and the right automobile, these sort of things. That's one of the dreams that people were, or advertisers were selling at this time. All right. And the other way, if you want to get the consumer, give him better options to purchase. And buying on credit became a popular way to purchase a lot of these goods, in particular the automobile and other sort of big bigger appliances like washing machines and radios and so on. So an installment plan, you pay each month, you pay part of it. You pay it in an installment, so it's buying on credit. And banks are offering very low interest rates, so these are very affordable, this cheap credit. And so here we have a farmer, and he's looking at the General Motors figuring chart. It's going to show him how much money it's going to cost him depending on what plan he's going to take, and say, hey, it makes pretty good sense to me. I can buy this car that if I had to buy it all at once, all of it, in one go, I can't afford that $500 for a Model T. But if I pay it over 20 months, hey, yeah, I can afford that. That's not a big hit on me each month. And yeah, I got to pay a little interest, but it's worth it. I'll have a car. I can get one tomorrow. Wow. So this becomes the way to sell a lot of the bigger ticket items. But this sort of shows one of the problems with it. This is a conversation between two neighbors, two housewives, with one asking to the other housewife, has your family bought an automobile yet? It's like, well, no. I talked it over with my husband, and he felt we could not afford one. Oh, well, Mr. Budge, he lives in your town, and he has one, and they don't make as much money as you. Well, yeah, I know, but their second installment came in, and they couldn't pay it. They didn't have enough money. Oh, did they lose the car? Like, oh, no. They were able to pay it. They got the money. Well, how did they get the money? Well, they sold their stove. Oh, well, they need a stove? It's like, yeah. They got a new one. They bought another one on an installment plan. And so this is sort of showing that a lot of consumers weren't spending properly. They may be spending more than what they could afford because of the allure and the that idea, I got to keep up with the others, and if I don't buy it, I'll be sort of lower in status. And so people overextending. And so once you spend too much early on, then you're going to maybe have to hold back a little bit, and consumer spending will start to decline. And it is sort of one of the problems that will lead to the Great Depression. All right, so business is booming. Production's up, income's up, consumption's up, profits are up. They're all sort of booming in this time, but there's some dark clouds on the horizon. Income inequality, farming's down. They're in a real funk. Railroads on the way down. It was a huge industry that's really in decline, and other industries sort of associated with it also in decline. And this easy credit will be a bit of a problem, but it is real. This sustained sort of boom time, and very much we see a shift to consumption and consuming as a status symbol. And remember, this is something that's happening within the urban areas, not so much out in those rural areas. The Great Depression is going to bring it to a grinding halt, and then we'll have World War II. But then after World War II, we're going to repeat this, but it's going to sustain itself for so much longer and will not lead to another crash like we had in 1929. So again, 1920s and 1950s, we're going to see a lot of parallels, and we'll see, this, what was old once, will become new again back then. So keep that in mind for a little synthesis. All right. Thank you very much for listening.